Hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute. This is a program. This is a show that's going to happen every 2 weeks. And what we're going to do is deeply try to explore the essence of this transition to a new human and a new world. We're looking for the issues and the ideas that are not talked about and are not the common information that you'll find other places. Let me talk about our subject for today, our topic. The title of this is Are We Living in an Op? The whole idea of an op is an intelligence term and a military term. It's an operation. And so it's an organized kind of framework and a strategy and a set of plans that are going somewhere. But in this particular case, the question is it overt? Is it clear? Is there something going on here that we're not aware of?
We are not living in this random, spontaneous series of events. I think the evidence very clearly supports that. And what you said is so important, John. How do we, and Penny, how do we even think about a new reality without doing it from within the confines of what we already know about ourselves? It's all about our story. This all comes down to our story and the way we have been conditioned to think about ourselves and our relationship to our own bodies, to other people in the world. And this is why this battle is so important, because as we begin to embrace the deep truth of the extraordinary potential within the human body, we free ourselves from the fear because we begin to see our potential. So what that means is when we are shown fear in the media, we are freed. We don't have to respond with fear. It's like what happens if they throw a war and nobody comes?
Right.
What happens if they throw a fear fest in the media and nobody responds? The game is over.
I do see it as an op. I see it as a failed op. And the reason for that failure is because the people trying to pull it off do not really understand the nature of consciousness. It's a huge risk to take, I'm going to use Gregg's words here, to break social alliances and leave people vulnerable, because vulnerable is open. And if you take the bad apple concept and you just reverse that, and you say there's one good apple in the social milieu, then that one person can have a huge effect and it grows. And so if you start breaking alliances and you leave people vulnerable and they're looking, they're reaching, they're after something, then they're going to go after something that they think, hope, want to be a higher bird call, we'll call it.
All reality is not. We could call it Operation Mind Control, taking that title from 3 decades ago, the book from Walter Boart. Yes, but of course, you see, another word for op could be spell. Are we living in a spell? Yes, we are also, because that is how you talked about the use of media and television to put people in a trance. What they're doing is putting people in a spell. But of course, when we're living it from inside out, it's so hard to see the trance we're in because we don't see ourselves. And I think that's the problem, is that most of the time we're not allowed to see ourselves. And so we go deeper into the trance or deeper into the spell. But of course, the question is how to break the spell. And as Penny said, and I think she made a good point there, is that the people behind this, or the powers behind this, they don't know completely the power of consciousness. They may know the power of ritual. That's the hardware. But we are working through the software, the power of consciousness. And that's where our power lies. And that's where I feel to break the op, we break the spell.
So thank you all, and we'll look forward to having you with us again in just 2 weeks. We appreciate it all, and welcome and to Quartet, and come back and be with us. Thank you. Hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and we welcome you to this initial episode of Quartet. We're going to get together every 2 weeks, just like this, with these wonderful friends of mine. And we're going to discuss some of the deep and enduring and unconsidered issues that are related to this amazing kind of transition that's going on in the world right now. Our panel, as it always will be, includes Gregg Braden, New York Times bestselling author, who comes to us today from New Mexico. Hello, Gregg.
Hey, John, it's good to see you. I'm honored to be with my esteemed panel and dear friends, and I'm really looking forward to where we go with this. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time. Dr. Penny Kelly comes to us from the Northland of Michigan, where she is an intuitive and an author and a marvelous kind of person who's been in science and other kind of places. Penny, nice to have you with us.
It is good to be here, and I'm so grateful for getting the invitation to join you. I love these kinds of things, especially with you guys.
And our panelist who comes the furthest and gets the prize for from the farthest place in the world is Kingsley Dennis. Kingsley is a wonderful author of many books and a great thinker, and he's from London. And welcome, Kingsley.
Thank you, John, for the prize for being furthest away, although I feel close, and it's good to be on the team with all of you. Good to be here.
All right. Well, thank you. This is a program. This is a show that's going to happen every 2 weeks. And what we're going to do is deeply try to explore the essence of this transition to a new human and a new world. We're looking for the issues and the ideas that are not talked about and are not the common information that you'll find other places. And we hope that you'll come back and join us each of the 2 weeks, and we'll give you complete information about how to be a part of this as we get to the end of the program. Let me talk about our subject for today, our topic. The title of this is, Are We Living in an Op? The whole idea of an op is an intelligence term and a military term. It's an operation. And so it's an organized kind of framework and a strategy and a set of plans that are going somewhere. But in this particular case, the question is it overt? Is it clear? Is there something going on here that we're not aware of? What we're living in is and working our way through is a paradigm shift. And many people don't know for sure exactly what a paradigm means. And a paradigm means how you describe your reality, how you describe reality. And when your paradigm shifts, it means that you have to redefine reality. And that's a function of all kinds of things. It happens if you get a divorce. It happens if you lose a job, or when you, like Kingsley, move to another location. And it certainly happens if the whole world kind of shifts underneath you. And what happens in paradigm shifts and global paradigm shifts is that you cannot make sense out of the emerging world from the position of the preceding world. And there's reasons to believe, and there are some authors that suggest that this transition from kind of traditional religions into the space that we all know so well, you might call it New Age or what, the other kind of variations of that, but that in fact, that there is an effort a potential effort to essentially truncate and drive people into a space to where they are taking advantage and using the images and the shapes and the forms and the processes from the past that are all familiar and that we all understand, and using that as the mechanism for control. Kingsley, many of us have been part of a conversation that says that the essential component of this emergent new world and new human is personal sovereignty. The ability to be able to know that you operate by yourself and that you can make your own decisions. And to the extent then that the framework that you operate in, that you allow to shape the frame, and truncate your independence is in fact could be an operation to in fact kind of shape this whole process and not allow the emergence of humans, this new ascension, this emergence, this increase in consciousness. And so my question to you all today is this all a big op? Is this are we to be suspect about a lot of the common things that we have been brought forth? And I'm not criticizing meditation, and I'm not criticizing ceremonies and all of those kinds of things. But it's really easy to take those kinds of motifs, those kinds of images, and bring them forward and make them the centerpieces of the process going forward. And so is this all somehow an op, or do we need to release ourselves from the images of the past and move into a new kind of space as we go forward? And so let's start with Gregg and give us about 3 minutes and respond to that, if you will, Gregg.
Well, John, I mean, I can't think of a better way to share our afternoon than have this conversation. And I completely agree with everything that you and Penny and certainly Kingsley are saying. We are not living in this random, spontaneous series of events. I think the evidence very clearly supports that. And what you said is so important, John. How do we, and Penny, how do we even think about a new reality without doing it from within the confines of what we already know about ourselves? It's all about our story. This all comes down to our story and the way we have been conditioned to think about ourselves and our relationship to our own bodies, to other people in the world. And this is why this battle is so important, because as we begin to embrace the deep truth of the extraordinary potential within the human body, we free ourselves from the fear because we begin to see our potential. So what that means is when we are shown fear in the media, we are freed. We don't have to respond with fear. It's like, what happens if they throw a war and nobody comes?
Right.
What happens if they throw a fear fest in the media and nobody responds? The game is over. And there is a very dangerous game that's playing out, and I've become very aware of this recently. And it's a game that goes back into the 1700s. Immanuel Kant, the philosopher, talked about the way that you control a population is that you divide them first. And Saul Alinsky in the 20th century picked up on this and developed these concepts into 4 fundamental principles. And once you see these principles, you can see the template very clearly. I'll just read the 4 principles. He said, what you do if you want to bring about social change, he said, you pick the target, you freeze the target, you personalize it, and you polarize it. And that's exactly what's happening. We started with the rich and the poor, the 99%, the 1%. We went to men against women, Christians against Muslims, blacks against whites. It goes on and on. And what this is doing, John, and it cannot be spontaneous because of the way that it's being done in the media. What it does is it breaks our social alliances within families, within communities and societies, to the point where we become very vulnerable to the imposition of new forms of living, new ways of living, new forms of control, because we are afraid. We lose those alliances. So my invitation as we talk about this is for people to stop playing the game. And the way that we do that is by embracing the deep truth that the science is revealing, and the science is on our side, showing us of this extraordinary potential within our bodies. And once we begin to embrace that, it changes the way that we see the events of the world. It empowers us to be sovereign biological beings and to think for ourselves and critically and analytically. And I think that's the foundation. It's all about our story. And what we're doing now is we're giving our community reasons to write a new story for themselves and for their families.
Absolutely. Very good introduction here. One of the problems in this transition is that we have we're all surrounded by many very well-meaning friends who are very interested in personal development and have gone to all the conferences and read all your books, all of our books, and they're scared to death right now because of the context and what is being done. And the larger question I want to get to is, in fact, then in the whole kind of evolutionary kind of process, is there a new track that we need to find?
Okay. I do see it as an op. I see it as a failed op. And the reason for that failure is because the people trying to pull it off do not really understand the nature of consciousness. It's a huge risk to take, I'm going to use Gregg's words here, to break social alliances and leave people vulnerable, because vulnerable is open. And if you take the bad apple concept and you just reverse that, and you say there's one good apple in the social milieu, then that one person can have a huge effect and it grows. And so if you start breaking alliances and you leave people vulnerable and they're looking, they're reaching, they're after something, then they're going to go after something that they think, hope, want to be a higher bird call, we'll call it. And that one apple can start this whole wave. And there are quite a few good apples that are out there. So yes, I see it as an op, and I don't see it succeeding because they don't understand the deep nature of consciousness.
Yes.
That's it.
And there are lots of sources that suggest the more positive view that you're describing is highly leveraged, that has, many times more
Yep.
more of an effect than in the negative approach. Kingsley, what do you think?
Well, John, the question, are we living in an op? I would say all lesser reality is an op, or I use reality with a smaller r. All reality is an op. We could call it Operation Mind Control, taking that title from 3 decades ago, the book from Walter Board. Yes, but of course, you see, another word for op could be spell. Are we living in a spell? Yes, we are also, because that is how you talked about the use of media and television to put people in a trance. What they're doing is putting people in a spell. Now, the next time you're in a room watching people watching television, move behind the television and look into the people's eyes as they're watching the television, and you'll see the trance on their face. But of course, when we're living it from inside out, it's so hard to see the trance we're in because we don't see ourselves. And I think that's the problem, is that most of the time we're not allowed to see ourselves. And so we go deeper into the trance or deeper into the spell. But of course, the question is how to break the spell. And if I use the word spell, I'm also referencing the word magic. Now, so often we say life is magic. Life is magical. It is. But on what side are you using that phrase? On one side, magical means life is joyous and wonderful. On the other side, life is magic because we're in a ritual, and the structure of the lesser reality and the structure of society is based around rituals. We can see that in the symbolism, which is all around us in our life, the use of visual symbols, the use of verbal symbols, the use of physical symbols. And so, and as Penny said, and I think she made a good point there, is that the people behind this, or the powers behind this, they don't know completely the power of consciousness. They may know the power of ritual, that's the hardware. But we are working through the software, the power of consciousness, and that's where our power lies. And that's where I feel, to break the op, we break the spell. And that I think maybe is where I'll leave it for you.
Well, we need to talk about that wonderful idea that there is an alternative to the ritual, to the context, and so on. There's an alternative path that, if we fully understand that, can offer us a whole new way in which to kind of have a kind of a guide star through this whole kind of process. Greg, you had something you wanted to say.
Well, I'm going to respond to what you're saying right now. First, I think one of the ways Buckminster Fuller I had so much respect for he and his ideas, and I think he identified one of the ways to break what I call, Kingsley, I agree completely. I call it dreaming a new dream, or breaking the old dream. And what Buckminster Fuller said, he said, you will never change the world by fighting against what you don't want, because that engages you in their rules and their game. He said, you want to change the world, find a new way to live that makes the old way obsolete, and people will follow that new way. You don't have to fight, you choose.
Well, let me just say that what you
Yeah.
suggest is right on about that. You essentially we need to build a new vision for a new world. We got to get a new idea about where we're going and how we get from there, and what this new human and this new world will start to look like. Otherwise, there are no focus, there is no manifestation. And I would suggest to you all, and we can talk about it later, that manifestation is at the core, at the essence of what this new human and this new world is about.
Okay. So if you want to build a new world, you have to change your consciousness. If you don't change your consciousness, you're going to get the same old world. Because if you look out there, what you see is the result of the consciousness we have right now. And if you don't shift that, then you're going to end up just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic kind of thing. And it's not going to fly, and it's going to run into all kinds of stuff. And I think the thing that people don't realize, I hear a lot of talk about financial stuff. I hear a lot of talk about religion. I hear a lot of talk about arguments around education. All of the assumptions that we make about those and everything else, those assumptions have to be changed. We can't have the same kind of finance. We can't have the same ideas about God. We can't have the same kind of education, or any of the other things, the food, the medicine, the business and trade, whatever. Everything has to change, and that's massive.
Thanks, John. I wanted to come in there. I mean, we're talking now about consciousness, which is still perhaps for many people a word which they can't pin down. Now, we can say that there's a new consciousness coming in, but let's say that a person receives consciousness and they have the ideas, but there's still the question of the person's ability to filter and manifest that consciousness. And I'd like to throw in another word here, the word of being. Because I feel that, people need a certain beingness, a certain groundedness with themselves, a certain center of gravity. Because, you can be a visionary. There's many visionaries who are still sitting in their lounges or salons, not doing a whole lot. It's okay to have ideas, but, you need to, whatever we bring in, we manifest it and bring into the world. And, there's a danger that the world becomes the majority of wimps, to put it crudely. I think we need a certain beingness, a certain inner strength, a certain inner groundedness. So if we have vision, if we have ideas, we can be practical about it, we can implement them. So everything needs a balance. Now, for example, Greg talked about the New Age element having a very selfish centeredness. Yes, I mean, I would agree with that. But of course, everything has its extremes and nuances. What I'm seeing now, especially in the last year, 18 months, is that a lot of people are going, I would call, being outer directed. They've been maneuvered to position themselves outside, look at other people, to care about what other people think about them, to be to fit in with the consensus. And by being outwardly directed, you could say, well, they're no longer being selfish. Well, in some degree, yes, but on another degree, I would say they're losing their beingness. They're losing their center of gravity. So, we can talk about consciousness, but I think we have to bring in these other elements and say, what is the person's being? Or, how do we bring it in to manifest it correctly in the right balance? So I think, there's all these elements going around. Of course, The spell, the op, as you say, John, is taking everyone out of themselves, and therefore they get weak inside.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you take your cues about how you make decisions and who you are and how you feel from the outside, then you're highly manipulatable because whoever controls the outside can shape you and drive this down a different track. And so the issue is, how do you extract yourself from that? And do you do that through meditation? Do you do that through the kinds of things that we are all familiar with? Or are there other kind of ways to do that? I would suggest, for instance, that a central kind of issue here is learning how to manifest in practical kind of terms. Because this new human, if you find and if we refine and develop the capabilities to do that, you are a new human, and then you have independence.
John, what you're speaking to, I agree, and it comes back to our story. Again, the way we have been taught and conditioned and indoctrinated to think about ourselves, it goes way, way back. We're taught that we're the product of a dead, inert universe, and that we are the product of what's called lucky biology and random mutations. And if you think that way, that leads you down a path that looks like the world we have right now. But the new science is telling us the universe is alive, it's conscious, it actually behaves as a living being. When a star explodes in one part of the universe, other parts compensate and respond as if they were a living system. And of course, the new discoveries that people have read my books are familiar with is that our genome is not the product of random mutations. There's some kind of intervention 200,000 years ago. So what this does, once we begin to realize that we are a highly advanced, highly sophisticated, scalable technology that is able to self-regulate our immune system, to self-regulate our longevity enzymes, to self-regulate our resilience to change, that story then changes the way that we interpret what this op is showing us. But it goes back to Einstein. Einstein didn't like the idea that consciousness could influence our world, and he liked to believe everything was separate. It's an old idea that is failing quickly. And I think that failure is the foundation of the new thinking that Kingsley and Penny and John, you and I are talking about, that we're part of everything, and that we are this self-regulating. We have the potential, if we choose to embrace it, to self-regulate this highly advanced, highly sophisticated, soft, scalable technology. And that's a way different way of thinking about humans. Changes everything. That's the new human.
Yeah.
And coming on to that, Greg, what I sense is that there's an acceleration of the unseen coming. It's been happening already. And that's why so many people can't place it, because what's accelerating hasn't yet been seen or verified or known. And you see, when you get, I mean, let's say the law of energy, when you get so much pressure coming down, things are going to come up eventually, And I think there's been so much pressure on the planet, on the human species, on the psychology and the consciousness as well. All those energies coming in, and a lot of it being, detrimental energies. What they're doing, of course, is something unseen is coming. Is obviously going to be the feedback, the backlash, so to speak. And and because the unseen is so unknown, no one can really figure it out. And I think what we need to do is we need to say, have faith in the unknown, have faith in the unseen, because that's where the human spirit lies. Is there's so much that we don't know about ourselves. We have to have faith in the parts we don't know about ourselves, because we're going to a place we don't wholly know either. And unless we can drop our anchors and drop our security chains, have faith in jumping out there, because there's an unseen rising as well at the same time.
Yeah, but what you seem to be arguing for, Kingsley, is a passive kind of position that says have faith. It's almost like religion in a sense. Seems to me, have faith, it'll all work out and everything. And I would argue that there's another side to that, and it says that you have to be engaged. You have to know where you're going. You have to have this vision. You need somewhere. We need to have an active kind of process personally, and then and more largely corporately that moves us into this new space.
I agree, John, and this is the whole point. This is where the new story comes in. We're looking at the very real probability of an economic collapse of the dollar that will ripple through the rest of the planet. We have been indoctrinated to fear contagions, to feel that we are powerless in the presence of bacteria and to fear viruses. We've been indoctrinated. So we've been indoctrinated to fear all of these things. So now when they all break at the same time, when you lose your economic system and there's a bug out there and everybody's afraid you're going to die, what do you do? And this is where the science comes in. This is the new human story, is do we love ourselves enough? It's all about love. Do we love ourselves enough to live our lives in a way that reflects the deep truth of who we are, that the science is confirming? And choose, when those things break, let them go gracefully. Don't try to preserve them. Move into the blockchain technologies, move into the self-regulation, move into the localized living and new communities and societies that we know in our hearts are true. And I think that's the proactive that you're talking about.
Yeah. Penny, what are you thinking
Let
about
me add
this?
something. Yeah, thanks. I think I love science. I love it. And I also have spent many, many years studying a lot of wisdom traditions. And so I wanted to see that wisdom tradition married to that science and the two of them come together. And I think one of the things you said, John, at some point was we're making this transition. And I was like, whoa. It just struck a chord because the transition is often death. It's dying. We transition to another world. So when you said that, I thought, you know what? In the Toltec wisdom tradition, the goal, no matter what, no matter who you are, male or female, young or old, the goal is to stay aware. It's to stay coherent. It's to stay present right up until the instant that you step out of the body and into the next world. And I think that wisdom is applicable now, and that we need to stay aware and coherent and present. And we need to also spend some time, because of the way the brain works, we need to spend some time envisioning where we're going. Because when you get into high stress and you get into fight or flight, you do not have access to the cortex. And all your knowledge and all your wisdom is stored. And so you're not going to be able to create some of those new things. You're not going to be able to recreate yourself as a new human if you haven't thought about that beforehand and stayed present to what is, because that keeps you from getting too stressed out. You have something to hang on to as you move into that future.
I want to thank you all for being a part of us and being a part of this conversation. And to those of you who are watching this, thank you for being here, because we can't do this and it doesn't make much sense to do this without you. And I want you to know that we'll be back in a couple of weeks and we're going to talk about is technology the Antichrist? Which should be an interesting kind of question, because it may be that the answer to that question is something different than you even thought about. And so if you enjoyed this, please make sure that you do all of the kind of click the button and hit the button and all those kinds of things. But more than that, put some comments down in the comments section down below, because we're looking for ideas. And if you've got an idea about things that we should talk about on the upcoming episodes, then please just put them in there, because we'll read them and we'll do this. And so let's go 30 seconds just around the table. And what's your prediction? What do you think is going to happen in the next 2 weeks before the next session of Quartet? Kingsley?
I think I've already mentioned that in the last time I spoke. I think there's going to be an increasing sense of some social discontent, and perhaps some increasing fractures in the political alliances that we're seeing happening now globally, as certain global elements start to hit on those alliances. So some more fracturing, I think.
Yeah. Good, Greg?
Yeah, I think in the next 2 weeks, John, the immediacy, what we're going to see is the conversation of personal sovereignty, health sovereignty, and body sovereignty is going to be the fractal of this conversation. Is going to be front and center. Ties in everything else, but that's what's going to really drive this conversation.
Great.
It's going to open the
Right.
door to a deeper conversation.
Absolutely. Penny?
What I see is a little different. What I see is that more people are waking up and that the difficulty coming toward us is not going to be as bad as we think it will. And we're going to witness some people going down. So that's
Well,
it.
my prediction is that is a little at odds with that, because I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And
Yeah.
certainly it's going to turn, but all the indications that I have is that this runs for the next couple of months at least, as the system starts to fray and come apart and so on. And there's a place, maybe at the first of the year or something like that, where it starts to turn and go in a new direction. So thank you all, and we'll look forward to having you with us again in just 2 weeks. We appreciate it all, and welcome and to Quartet, and come back and be with us. Thank you.